Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Well, I just finished recording a podcast to post for today, but then I thought to myself, maybe it was a little bit dark because it was idioms regarding death, because Matthew Perry has just died, and one of my favorite actresses, Lara Parker, has also died. She was in Dark Shadows. It was one of these supernatural TV shows about a vampire living in the 1960s. Very badly made. But Lara Parker was the femme fatale, the evil witch, and she was loved because of her good looks. She had those very large eyes, which in the 60s was considered to be something very attractive. But finally, I thought, idioms about death, that's a little bit depressing. So I decided to change and do a podcast about the cold weather instead, because, that one about death was a little bit too dark, even for me, I think. But anyway, the cold weather is here. So we're going to do some idioms about the cold weather. But just touching on death for a moment, today that new song from the Beatles comes out called Now and Then. Yeah, everyone's talking about it. John Lennon and a few others, I think, had recorded it before he died. And so with artificial intelligence, they've tidied it all up and they're going to release it. I don't know why everyone loves the Beatles so much. I mean, they're very good, of course. One question I'm asked in lessons all the time is, what do you think of the Beatles? What do you think of The Who? What do you think of other British punk bands? And I'm thinking, hello, how old do you think I am? I wasn't around in the 60s, so go and ask somebody else, like your mother or father or an old English teacher. Someone asked me the other day, why do you think older people like the Beatles? And I said to them, well, why don't we find an older person and ask them? Because I don't know. They weren't around in my time. I think they'd actually split up by the time I was born, or near enough anyway. So, anyway, there was a report today on BBC Radio 6 about this new song coming, and the woman said, oh, the first time I heard it, I just couldn't stop crying. I'm thinking, really? I don't think I'd be quite so emotional. Maybe I am just a hard-hearted Skype English teacher, but I can't imagine being moved by it. I think part of the problem is British people, we don't really deal with death very well. And with a song like this, which has been artificially put together, it's kind of haunting, isn't it? Because it's from the past and it kind of sends a cold shiver down your spine, bearing in mind that John Lennon is long since gone. Yeah, yeah. So there we are. Anyway, getting back to the weather. So we have biting. Yeah. So if the weather is really cold, you can describe it as being biting because it's like something is biting you. It's extremely cold in a way that feels as if your skin is being pinched. Frigid is very cold and lacking warmth, but it also can be used to describe a person who isn't warm. Maybe they're not warm people. Like, Mediterranean countries and warm countries, people are generally quite happy in their approach to life. But if they're not like that, the person can be described as frigid. But it's also a way of talking about the weather. Just it's very cold. Chilly, I'm sure you know that one. cold enough to cause discomfort. Frosty. Oh, that just reminds me, we have a special breakfast cereal in the morning called Kellogg's Frosties. Oh, those things are delicious. You might remember the advertising campaign with Tony the Tiger. Kellogg's Frosties are delicious. But frosty is when it's really cold. Um, Icy is when, of course, things are covered with ice. And we also use that when we bake cakes. We put the icing on the cake. Did I tell you that a friend, a Polish lady, dropped in a few days ago with a couple of cakes? They look delicious. Of course, I can't eat them because I'm diabetic. And she kept telling me, oh, go on, please eat my cakes. Okay, it's a very bad Polish accent there. But I told her, I said, I can't. My blood sugar is very high. And she seemed disappointed, but she ate them herself finally. But they look delicious. Yeah, so icing on the cake. So the weather is icy. Nippy, oh, that's very common. It means briskly cold, nippy. To nip means it kind of catches you, pinches you. Yeah, so a bit nippy. We can describe that for people as well. Yeah, I know a few people around here who are a bit nippy. It means that they're very cold and that they're not warm people. They can give you very direct answers. They think it's perhaps being funny or controlling, but well, I just ignore them if they do that with me. Bitter, sharply cold and piercing, but remember that can also describe a mood if you're feeling very bitter, where you want to avenge something that's happened to you. Brisk, cool and fresh. Yeah, that's something the doctor told me in a very condescending way. Oh, now that you have diabetes, remember, take a brisk walk every day and eat lots of porridge. I'm thinking, yeah, just like you do, because you're 3 times the size I am. I was a bit bitter about that. But anyway, wintry, a characteristic of winter. So wintry, summery, autumnal. You can't say autumny and you can't say springy either. So wintry or summery. Freezing, very cold, potentially to the point where water turns to ice. Because of course freezing is the temperature of your freezer, isn't it? Maybe below freezing as well. So there we are. Some idioms also might include, let's see, for the weather, you could say things like, oh, it's Baltic, isn't it? Or, oh, it's like Siberia around here. That's very common. So there's some common ones there. As cold as ice. Brass monkeys. That's very common. You know, it's the weather. It's brass monkeys today. This phrase comes from an Old English expression, which I can't really tell you here because it's very rude, but you can Google it. But we do use that a lot. Oh, it's brass monkeys. Chilled to the bone. Oh, yeah. But that's not only about the weather. If you feel a great sense of loneliness, you can say you're chilled to the bone. In fact, do you remember that song from the 1980s? The 80s is always my point of reference, isn't it? There was a song called Alone by Heart. It was the 80s, okay? So this woman is standing on the balcony singing loudly about how alone she feels. And one of the lyrics in that song is, it chills me to the bone. How do I get you alone? So she's basically pining about her lover who isn't answering the phone I don't know why she had to go to a balcony and sing about it, but anyway. Um, yeah, there are some other idioms related to weather, but we don't use them about the weather. So to break the ice. So if you meet someone for the first time, you want to say hello to them, a good introduction. That's called breaking the ice. Okay. Um, but it also can conjure up images of coldness and frost. That's why I'm mentioning it. Um, a cold day in hell, and again, this idiom is usually used to suggest that something is unlikely to happen. Yeah, and that would be like a cold day in hell if that happened, but fortunately it won't. But obviously, it conjures up images in our minds of weather as well. Um, yeah, and that's all. So I hope you've enjoyed those. So some idioms about the weather. Um, yeah, it's already getting really cold here. We're having a bit of a cold snap, and I've heard that Storm Kieran is hitting the south coast. Honestly, we used to just have storms. They didn't have names, but now we have Storm Janet, Storm Kieran, Storm whatever. And I don't know why they feel the need to name them, because when you give something a name, it tends to conjure up an identity about how it's going to work. If they just left them alone, they probably wouldn't sound so serious. And I don't know where they get the names from either. So yeah, but anyway, there we are. So I hope you've enjoyed this, some idioms about the cold weather. Let's talk again soon. If you are still celebrating Day of the Dead, congratulations. It's almost over. Tomorrow, I think everything's back to normal. The Day of the Dead is a big celebration in Mexico, and we don't celebrate these things here in the UK. All right, so bye. See you soon.